Historians have recently turned their focus to the effects of the First World War on sexual behavior and perceptions of sexual norms and identities. As historian Dagmar Herzog observed, the First World War disrupted traditional social structures and created an environment in which men and women could explore new sexual experiences made possible by mass mobilization and separation from the restrictions imposed by traditional institutions. We are introducing this video, The Shocking Truth About Germany's Sex and the Weimar Republic During the First World War. As a result of this disruption of existing social structures, military and civil authorities in both democratic and authoritarian societies try to control and monitor the behaviors of both soldiers and civilians, enforcing ideal masculine and feminine sexual behaviors in the context of militarization and the nation's interests. Ordinary men's and women's responses to medical, military, and political efforts at control were complex. As historian Krista Hammerl recently observed, it is difficult to uncover the degree to which hegemonic, militarized conceptions of gender roles were accepted by the majority of soldiers who experienced the Great War. While many soldiers and civilians reinforced hegemonic gender and sexual paradigms, the total war experience also led many to subvert, appropriate, and distort prevailing norms. Militaries organized systems to regulate sexual behavior. The German military organized a system of regulated brothels just behind the lines, with medical examinations of prostitutes. The French military also expanded a system of maisons tolérées, tolerated houses, where prostitution was carefully regulated. Doctors and government ministers in France advocated regular medical checks for soldiers and prostitutes to control the spread of disease, which, as one expert asserted, threatened to erode not only the fighting strength of the army, but also France's racial health. The American military used posters in training camps to urge soldiers to remain morally clean. In Germany, men infected with VD on the home front were required to identify the women alleged to have transmitted the disease. And revealing the degree to which women bore the brunt of punishment, suspect women were registered as prostitutes. Military authorities generally saw soldiers' sexual activity and search for relief as a natural instinct that could not be negated but had to be managed. The Austro-Hungarian military, for example, saw soldiers who sought sexual relationships as perfectly normal, while women who became prostitutes were perceived as temptresses who caused this crisis. Catholic authorities in Austria-Hungary laid the blame for the sexual crisis on the rise in prostitution, and women were perceived as immoral, while the proliferation of male sexual instincts was seen as excusable in the context of war. This perception of men as more sexually aggressive also had a racial dimension. For example, French police saw African American soldiers as more sexually promiscuous and more difficult to control. Sex was rationed as the military attempted to take control of human sexuality. Civilian organizations in Germany, including the German Center for Youth Welfare, Deutsche Zentrale für Jugendversorgung, call on the Bavarian War Ministry to organize regular medical examinations for prostitutes, isolate and treat men with VD, and educate soldiers on how to avoid infection. The Baden-Württemberg and Prussian-administered armies also mobilized VD prevention campaigns by early 1915. The Prussian War Ministry organized lectures for soldiers on the potential consequences of alcohol abuse, which doctors argued led to higher rates of infection as drunken men were less likely to abstain from visiting prostitutes. French morality crusaders also denounced the proliferation of alcohol at the front as the trigger for sexual degeneration. In 1915, François Doulon wrote a study of prostitution that attacked the dealers of liquor and beer for the proliferation of sexual immorality that poisoned France's fighting strength. In Italy, the Humanitarian Society of Milan linked rising alcohol consumption to escalating sexual promiscuity, and social commentators tried to curtail drinking in an effort to control youth. When the United States entered the war in 1917, the American progressive movement quickly saw the war as both a threat to morality and an opportunity for expanding social control. the U.S. War Department set up a commission that encouraged soldiers to armor themselves against the temptations of alcohol and sexual infidelity. And the government set up workshops for soldiers in stateside barracks to prepare them before being shipped to France. The history of sexuality as constructed from the perspectives of ordinary individuals in the context of total war is difficult to uncover. While dominant images of masculinity and femininity, defined by civil and military elites, are pervasive, definitions of gender and sexuality from the perspectives of ordinary soldiers and civilians are much more evasive, nuanced, and complex. As sociologist Ardud Cannell argued, while hegemonic masculinity was defined in opposition to subordinate forms of masculinity, perceptions and constructions of hegemonic masculinity were contested and always changing. The First World War caused a seismic disruption in perceptions of sexuality and gender norms. The war put tremendous strains on relations between men and women, and efforts by military, civil, and medical authorities to control a hegemonic, idealized gender paradigm quickly broke down. Disillusioned with prevailing ideals of the steel-nerved, sexually chaste, emotionally disciplined warrior, some men began to mock the masculine image imposed from above, and many rejected expectations that they sacrifice their own emotional and sexual desires. Traditional gender roles and sexual norms became further strained as men resented women's alleged infidelity, promiscuity, and comfortable existence on the home front. Military and medical authorities reinforced this resentment by scapegoating women for the VD epidemic and for not supporting the emotional needs of men at the front. So, let us know your thoughts in the comments section. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and press the bell icon so you may never miss any of our future updates. See you in the next one.